My name is Laura, and I am a stay-at-home wife. And oh, yeah, I take care of my husband who has been paralyzed for 3 years plus. This was directly related to when he had a heat stroke as a field engineer. During one hot day in an open field fortnight, he actually passed out while on duty. Over this, he collapsed, and when he was on top of a 3-story building, in his stand to fall, heavily falls. This caused the commotion, and luckily, he was brought to hospital immediately. The most heartbreaking day of my life. The phone was barely on the verge of receiving a call, and my whole body started shaking. I was floored by what I heard, but I also could not take the chance of what would happen to my husband. What if we lose him? I got the hospital details and rushed there immediately. To my surprise, my mother-in-law beat me. She was being hysterical and panicky as hell. Martha, calm down. Everything will be okay. My son is dying, and you want me to be cool? Are you insane? She shouted at me. I'm not shocked at all. I am well accustomed to the fact that she finds me absolutely bloody irritating. It is either abusive or nagging. Fuck you. I do not even care anymore. Although, truth is I always want to talk back her, but what does it achieve? So, instead, the quite stiff upper lip. My husband was held for nearly 2 weeks. I stayed by his side and did everything he needed for a week. I was adamant that I needed to look after him, and obviously he is my husband, so why wouldn't I be hands-on? I have to be there for him when he needs me most. But on the 2nd week, my mother-in-law said that she will do everything. She said for me to get back to work and save up money because the bills were only going to start piling in. Who knew how long he was gonna have to stay in that hospital? I said it was okay and that I would not go to work. My husband needs me during his recovery. One who wanted me to be with her so badly. The doctor added that he is stable now. No worries, I will watch him so you can go to work tomorrow. It's fine. I already filed a leave of absence from our boss. He understands my situation. No, you too. Of course, this time imagine my surprise when she actually answered. Why was she so mad? But I have a 2 weeks work leave, so my boss said it's okay. You have to work, so go. I was following her against my will. Maybe she just wanted some mom alone time with her son, and maybe also was legitimately a little bit worried about the money. The following day, I went to the office. I dedicated all my time and soul to what I did. All my office mates were amazed I showed up that day. Every one of them knew the gravity concerning my husband. So, I told them that for the finances, there is a lot of extra work needed from me. My boss was kind enough to give me higher pay this month just so I can have funds not only for the hospital bill, but everything that would help him recover. Unfortunately, inch by excruciatingly slow inch as the doctor relayed his many test results back to us, half of my dad's body was going paralyzed. I'm afraid I have some bad news for you, Mrs. Thompson. After your husband took a nasty spill down the stairs last night, he has experienced partial paralysis of his right side as well. Still, there is hope to reverse this. Thank God, doctor. Thank you. I am the mother of Ethan, and I know that you are doing all within your power to relieve him. Do whatever is in your power. I have no idea what the doctor said after that last part. My mother-in-law cut him off. But the one thing I'll know, my married man is paralyzed. He will be on his back for the rest of days. My heart sank. I could not imagine him having to go through this. I hate to see him like that. The mother-in-law demanded that she should be staying with us because her son needs to personally care for his own affairs while I go out there and be one of the men. Well, maybe that is a sincere and true act that I also don't want to bother her as she gets old too. We could pay for a private aid, but she would insist she was going to do it. So, in that case, as soon my husband got discharged, there was an instant arrival of mother-in-law. 3 anus grill ago, my husband was involved in a tragic accident. We followed all the interventions and therapy he had to do in order for him to recover quickly, but nothing was happening. There was none at all. I have always worked for my family. That includes taking care of medical bills for my husband. It was my mother-in-law who accompanied to therapy sessions and took medication with him. Every time they were done at one, I would check in after the session and ask about what improvements my husband had made or whether any former wounds/injuries/health issues flared up. But every time she responded, "Better than the last one. No progress. There is no improvement." The doctor said, "Well, we need to do another session, etc. We always do 3-year session, and after all this time there is no progress." I said, "Is it the doctor or my mother-in-law?" I didn't want to feel unkindly toward her, but could not avoid doing so. But in the heart, as a family, I will not consider her evil. One weekend, I told my mother-in-law that she could take a break and sleep as much as needed to rest while I held the space for taking care of her son. I knew that I would feel this way each day for the rest of his life as I sat beside him, watching him live with paralysis. The war rages on each day, and it feels as if I'm always in a losing battle. I talk to him, give a description of my day, and everything that would register as another piece in the puzzle for every memory he had about me, because even if it doesn't all sync up, I remind him again how much so very special he is, but has still my husband. Sitting on a chair, clutching my husband lying weakly in pain on his bed. He was completely paralyzed and mute, suggesting his recovery looked grim. She seemed like that pillar of strength, especially during these trying times. She was our glue, but this little part of me began to suspect, a native intuition reminding me how it has never sounded right. One time I came home from work before fucking 9 p.m. I quickly went to my husband's room, but just as I reached there and was about to enter, I could hear that voice of mother-in-law talking with someone. Now, unless I'm completely off my rocker, and perhaps even if that's true, I swear, I heard my husband say something too. They talked amongst themselves, so I dashed for the door. I went to open it, but the door was closed. I started trying to open the door by holding onto its knob and knocking it, but my mother-in-law opened it after 2 minutes. I headed in, and as soon as I crossed it, everything felt back to normal. My husband was down with dextrose placed intravenously. Everything stood still. "Who were you talking to?" So then showed her the phone. She rolled eyes. "My friend. What about it?" I stopped myself from rolling my eyes and went to take care of my man. Her behavior is weird, and I am through putting up with it. My mother-in-law would at times try to completely take over my husband's care, refusing me access or even attending medical appointments herself. Her jealousy and protectiveness were starting to be a bit much. I felt something off about her. This does not make sense to me. Hence, I got Martha, it's mine. I want to do daily things like helping him out the door. This is my husband, please let me take care of him. Laura, I love you. I know that, but Hans has been in my care for the last few months and I know what's best for him. I get it, you have been helping him and I just want in. It's my duty as his wife. When my mother-in-law heard this, her expression became cold, and she whispered as if approaching closer to me. "You don't understand, Laura. I know what Hans needs. Believe me, I am looking out for his best interest." I was starting to get frustrated, but I kept my coolest. "Thanks, Brigade, for your amazing support, but I want to be massively involved in Hans's care. I would like to drive him to therapy and appointments. I want to be there for him." She narrowed her eyes, taking suspicion in every word. "Why are you intent on being along with us, Laura? Are you trying to manage everything? I've been the one mothering him, giving up my time and self-sacrificing." My heart sank. Her accusations hurt me. Why is she being so rude? That is my husband we are talking about. "Oh, I'm not holding anything over you, Martha. All I want is to step up and stand beside my husband. I love him, and I want to help him in any way that he can." Out of frustration, she pushed me away. In fact, I even fell to the ground because of how hard he hit me. "This is my son and you are an outsider, so don't tell me who you expletive. or what the hell you're going to do because I don't give a shit. He is my husband, and I must be in control of every single thing we decide on or do. I am his wife and I need to be consulted on anything there is that needs for my husband's recovery. Yet I feel like a mere spectacle, an anomaly. I could only hold my peace and ditch her in the act. You crazy, possessive bitch. She was one thing I had known right from the beginning, before either of us could tell you a single letter in each other's names. She is not to be trusted. She does not even tell me critical medical information. I was not told of one doctor's report because my mother-in-law will give me nothing. I knew something was going on behind my back, so one fine Sunday afternoon, I finally took things into my own hands, doing what my gut feeling was telling me. I got a hidden camera into my husband's room. I wanted to see why this type of behavior like that with her mother is happening. I put the tiny camera while her suggestive walk with my hubby on a chair in required afternoon gardening. I concealed it in a place that would escape their notice. I let it sit for a week, daydreaming about when the time came that I could go over what was on it and unlock all of its mysteries. My mother-in-law took my husband for one more therapy. God, I think there is something wrong with that session. As soon as they received the money of that session's fee, they left. She will not have that and told me to forget it. I am taking them. This would be a chance to listen finally to those tapes. It was the kind of footage that made my heart race in anticipation. My world shattered around me. IGSPD covering my mouth. There is no way this is real. I peered closer and saw my completely immobilized husband not on a bed, but instead walking around chatting with his mother. My chest began to pound, my whole body trembling, shaking in fear. But of all the lies, I did not see this coming. I blew up at my husband, like they were normal whenever I left them. I was overcome by shock and disbelief, and the tears sprung to my eyes. LDCOULDTHUILIETOME. Lucky for you it was one of those hidden camera shows, and there were a couple other places in your house that had microphones on the premises to pick up audio recordings. And then I got to listen in on their conversations. I don't have any energy left for absorbing whatever they were discussing. It pains me. The words that were coming out of their mouths felt like knives in my heart. This was light. I found out that my husband was recovered the first 5 months of his therapy, and they just made a fool out of me. Plus another tragic conversation that way too many of us are familiar with. TGENTOFWAKTN. Was the money from Laura's account deposited to our covert business transaction less? Of course, my son. I've been doing it regularly. She won't suspect a thing. My husband winked and laughed. Excellent. She was furiously working while we lived our lives. We'll have everything our own way in no time. My money is going to them. They have been conspiring against me. This is the mother of all heartache. Into the camera, my husband chuckled. A devilish laugh. You really hit that pity card jackpot, didn't you? Laura took the bait. My mother-in-law snorted and sat, obviously pleased with herself for having busted the two of us. She said, and I thought we were so loving towards her, and she never knew waste for an escape beforehand. Escape? I mean, they're taking my money and making fun of me. This couldn't possibly stand. I watched as they again conversed over some dirt, capturing their incrimination on the hidden camera. We would have nothing left when our top secret business gets off the ground with Laura, to find out that she has been fooled. His mother nodded, their bond sealing with every word. Darling son, what a hoot to be in cahoots with you. It will stay our little secret, and Laura shall learn innocent as she is. As I finally realized how they had betrayed me, did my eyes flood with tears. I refused to be a victim anymore. We guess whatever lies you have told, will I'll rise again and take back what is mine. But something else even worse occurred to me as I watched the truth unfold before my eyes. I've been working hard to save up enough cash for my ailing husband's medical bills, but all that money has just gone down the drain on their little backroom project. And this hurt me the most. They squandered my earnings to get a business off the ground right in front of me, all while I believed it was an investment into my husband's health and good fortune. Even after many sessions, still my husband has not been returned. Ah, so this is why my mother-in-law wanted to take care of her son and no one else. I wanted proof of all this. When I heard the address of their secret business location, and since somebody asked where it was, thanks to God that he revealed his cards in one of our conversations, I visited his abode because they invited me. The construction was in progress, and without wasting more time I hurried to the spot. I had my phone in hand, and then walked around taking photos of their lies, exposing them as the cheats they are. The only written legacy of these traitors would be their photos. I didn't want to leave it at that. Anger raced through me, and a hunger for retribution. I wished them to truly feel the ache and shame they brought about unto me. So I meticulously plotted my revenge, which I would execute on the day of my next birthday party. This monstrosity cannot be allowed to take hold. I want everybody to know what they did. The day came and I greeted my guests, including my husband and mother-in-law. They had no idea the storm that was about to descend upon them. And I could not see pity wash over me from my husband now. There he sat in a wheelchair, not an ounce of shame or guilt. I craved the satisfaction of bringing clarity into their darkness. During the party, I stood in center and gathered everyone. The rest of the evening became a birthday celebration for me. It means the world to me. The audience erupted in cheers and thunderous applause, showing their love for you. Before we get the party started, I have a little surprise for all of you. I glanced at my husband and his mother, standing nearby faking calm. I have been working on a very special something, and I want to share these great news with you all tonight, because successes are meant to be celebrated with certain people in your life, which includes all of you. One of the big things I deposited was a large framed and covered sign. I mostly ripped off the cloth covering it, and there was a photo of my husband went with his mother doing some underhanded business. So me and the rest of his bandmates all started smiling like there was no tomorrow. My latest adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the business I am now founding, and I have managed to secure you all an invitation, LEDIES and GNTLEMEWSCONETUMINEWBUSINESSPLESJOINMENEXTWEK ORTHEGRANDOPNINGEVNT. My husband and mother-in-law were in shock, faces priceless, as the guests cheered me on. The mask they wore was falling apart in the company of our friends and family. My husband, in a frenzy of agitation, leaped up from his wheelchair yelling, "That is mine." All the people in that venue gasped. Others were puzzled or shocked with what they just saw. My husband, who is believed to be paralyzed, already got up and shouted his heart out. The guests made no sound, their eyes open and disbelieving. "Oh, hens, you're mistaken. This is my business. You did spend all my money, remember? Playing games with me. You and your mom, I was so convinced you were paralyzed, when really you had already been made well. And that is the secret you just unveiled." This brought a murmur of whispers into the room. Then it clicked into place for people, and they started to see the deceit of which we all have been a part. Wait, Hens isn't paralyzed. Did he fake this the entire time? This sent my mother-in-law into a panic and even tried to take over the situation. It's not what you think. It can all be explained. Spare me the apology, Martha. Lies and deception, you and the EIAD. I drew a folder from behind the stage with pictures of their concealed business, extortion money, and joint hustle. Now everyone take a look at all of these pictures. That is the truth they kept from us. They built this business using my own hard-earned money without me knowing. The visitors saw the proof of guilt. They all wore their anger and disappointment on their faces. I am so sorry they abused your goodwill, Laura. They manipulated all of us. They should be ashamed. And then my husband, stricken with his own rage, and forgetting entirely his act of a moment ago, began moving. He was no longer frozen. Everyone had been caught off guard. The room fell to absolute silence. It was all her idea. My mother made me do it. I looked in Hen's face with sadness and anger. I trusted you, Hens. We were meant to take this on as a unit. The people around me expressed solidarity with our situation, which gave both my husband and mother-in-law the wake-up call they very much needed. Then they begged for mercy when the lies came unraveled. My mom dropped to her knees and begged for my forgiveness, with tears flowing down his face in humiliation. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law just stood there not swallowing her pride. She stayed proud and conceited. That was when I took my power back and walked away. I knew the house and I claimed it as my own. Same with his business. And slowly but surely, I got myself back. As though in response, I left them at the venue silent as a lamb. Enough is enough. I am finished with all you're censored. Their betrayal came with a high price, and I exiled them never to return. So I moved on from their manipulation and lies, began putting the pieces together to rebuild life. It was a search for happiness. The wounds they created would take time to recover, but I knew for sure that now I was getting ready to move on and never return, in a future of freedom without the shadows cast by lies.
Mom, sis, and grandma are family, so I was expecting each of them to contribute $30,000 as a wedding gift. But sis had the nerve to suggest not inviting grandma to the wedding because accommodating her wheelchair would be too much trouble. I was stunned by what sis said. It gave me a headache. Grandma, whom sis didn't want at the wedding, is like a mother to us. Plus, it's entirely sis's fault that grandma needs a wheelchair. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even think of her as my sister anymore. My name is Jessica. Growing up, my sister Chloe and I had a tough time. Dad was a violent drunk, and Mom always took the brunt of it while trying to protect Chloe and me. It was heartbreaking to see Mom covered in bruises. Dad was like a storm every time he came home, wreaking havoc. Chloe and I spent our childhood huddled in a corner, waiting for the chaos to subside. As you might imagine, our parents eventually divorced. Dad was furious about the divorce, but somehow Mom managed to go through with it. Custody went to Mom, so Chloe and I ended up living in Mom's childhood home, where we began living with Mom, Grandma, and me. Grandma was incredibly kind to us, showering us with love to heal our emotional wounds. Since Mom was working full-time, Grandma took care of most household chores. She cooked our favorite meals, taught us the names of flowers in the garden, and instilled good manners in us. I can't thank Grandma enough for all she did. So, I couldn't understand Chloe's gradual change of heart. Around the time she hit her rebellious phase, Chloe started to change. She often hung out with a bad crowd and stopped studying altogether. Even at home, she'd grumble and tell us to move whenever she passed us in the hallway or on the stairs. Chloe's bad attitude was a constant concern for me, Mom, and Grandma. But things reached a breaking point when Chloe was in college. By then, Chloe regularly came home in the early morning hours, often drunk. It reminded me of the worst of Dad. Then, one day, the incident happened. Chloe came home drunk from a club party. I was already disgusted by her wandering around the house so carelessly when it happened. "Hey, Grandma, you're in the way. Move," Chloe said as Grandma was slowly descending the stairs due to her bad back. Chloe knew this, yet she pushed Grandma from behind, causing her to lose her balance from the sudden shove. While holding onto the handrail, Grandma fell down the stairs, and we had to call an ambulance. Mom and I were furious with Chloe. Pushing an elderly person is just unthinkable. Even with the ambulance arriving, Chloe tried to justify herself, saying she barely touched Grandma and couldn't believe she fell from just that. Grandma ended up fracturing her leg and worsening her already bad back, which resulted in a hospital stay. I visited Grandma daily, encouraging her as she diligently worked through her rehab. Yet Chloe never once came to visit. How could she do this to Grandma, who has always taken care of us? I'd say in rage, to which Grandma would always reply, "It's okay, it's fine," though her smile didn't quite reach her downturned eyebrows, showing she was saddened by Chloe's actions. Grandma worked hard in rehab, but ultimately had to adjust to life in a wheelchair. None of us had ever thought this would happen, and our house was not equipped for it. We made some adjustments, like installing ramps, but it was a challenging transition. Grandma was deeply saddened by her new limitations. While I was in college, I had the time to help Grandma, but it became difficult after I started working. We told Chloe, who was still a student, that she was the reason Grandma was in a wheelchair now, so she should help her when she's home. However, our words fell on deaf ears. While scrolling through her phone, Chloe would respond with a careless yeah, and continued her partying and drinking, never assisting Grandma when she needed it. Our patience was wearing thin with Chloe, but the tipping point came when she announced she was getting married and pregnant. She arrogantly apologized for getting married before me, stating she's the beautiful one and marrying up. Chloe started talking about her dream wedding, with a far-off look in her eyes. Apparently, she's planning to have the ceremony sooner rather than later to avoid being visibly pregnant. With her wealthy husband providing ample funds, Chloe boasted about having the wedding of her wildest dreams, wearing a princess-like dress, planning surprises, and going all out with the food. She even had the audacity to tell Mom and me that we should feel grateful for being invited. While I found Chloe's behavior intolerable, she's still my sister. I was genuinely happy for her marriage and pregnancy, but being told to be grateful for an invitation was off-putting. Furthermore, Chloe only mentioned Mom and me, completely omitting Grandma. Unaware of my growing suspicion, Chloe unknowingly answers my unspoken questions. Mom, Sis, and Grandma are family, so I'm expecting wedding gifts to be around $30,000. Oh, but don't invite Grandma to the ceremony. It's a hassle to accommodate someone in a wheelchair, you know. I couldn't believe the nerve of my sister, Chloe. I knew she was out of line, but this was just too much. The amount she expected for a wedding gift was outrageous, and most shocking of all, the idea of not inviting Grandma to the wedding was unthinkable to me. Grandma stepped in to take care of us when Mom was swamped at work. She raised us with so much love. To treat Grandma like she's a burden, and to think Chloe was the one who pushed Grandma down the stairs, leading to her being wheelchair-bound. Grandma has been saying how she feels like a burden since then. Chloe's words must have cut her deep. For Grandma, who's often felt down since becoming wheelchair-bound, thinking she's a burden to everyone, Chloe's words would have been tough to hear. Though Grandma said congratulations to Chloe, her usually kind smile was tinged with sadness. I couldn't stand it anymore. A surge of anger bubbled up from within me, an anger that had been simmering ever since Grandma was pushed down the stairs. That was the moment I decided I was done considering Chloe my sister. All right, make sure to get a proper wedding gift. You better wear something nice, or you'll make my fiancé's high-profile guests look bad, Chloe said, wheeling out a large suitcase from her room and leaving the house, completely ignoring Mom's angry shouts. I'm so happy to finally get out of this old, dirty house, she said, filled with spite, and left, waving her hand. Mom and Grandma were stunned for a moment, but I was burning with a desire for revenge. I shared my plan with Mom and Grandma, and although they were shaken, after all, Chloe is Mom's daughter and Grandma's granddaughter. If they disagreed, I was going to try to talk them out of it. But they thought about it for a minute and then nodded. We need to set her straight once and for all, Mom said, filled with regret about her parenting. Grandma reassured her, you were an excellent mother. It's my fault Chloe turned out this way, seeing the two of them. So hurt only fueled my determination for revenge even more. Months later, the day of Chloe's wedding arrived. Since it was a day off, I was enjoying a cozy tea time at home with a book. I looked at the clock and noticed that Chloe's wedding had already started. Grandma had even baked cookies to go with the delicious tea, making for a truly serene day off. Just then, both my and Mom's cell phones and the home landline began to ring. Frustrated by the relentless calls, Mom was about to answer the phone, but I stopped her. It's not her battle to fight. It's my revenge as the older sister. Hey sis, why aren't you at the wedding? Mom's not here either. What's going on? None of my friends are here either, so my guest seats are empty. Chloe's teary voice came through the phone. I responded calmly, "Do you really think Mom and I would support someone who doesn't appreciate Grandma, who has been so good to us? We all warned you multiple times about your behavior, but you ignored us. So we decided to ignore your requests. We're not coming to the wedding, and we're not sending a gift." "You're lying. You told my friends not to come, didn't you?" "I don't have your friends. If they're not there, doesn't that just show you're not as love as you thought?" Chloe's voice was filled with sorrow, but I had more to say. "By the way, we sold Grandma's house and moved. We're not telling you where. What? Why wasn't I informed? We don't want you to come. You've made Grandma's life miserable." I understand that you might see my actions as cruel, but I had to stand up for Grandma, who has been mistreated. Chloe, the one who forced Grandma into a wheelchair is you. Our new home is entirely accessible, and we even designed the kitchen to be easy for Grandma to use. She baked cookies today, and we're enjoying them now in our new home. It's heartless to ask us to come to the wedding now. And as for inviting Dad, that's a terrible idea. We haven't seen Dad since the divorce, and inviting him could only lead to trouble. Dad's drinking problem is as bad as ever, and he caused a scene at the wedding reception. He grabbed the microphone and went on an uninvited rant about how lonely he felt about his daughter's marriage. He even sang a song and tripped while drunk, crashing head first into another table. Chloe's husband, being a CEO, had many business partners at the wedding who were completely disappointed by Dad's actions. Several people even left the wedding, feeling uncomfortable, and unsurprisingly, Chloe's husband and his family were furious. Chloe seemed to be under attack from all sides, but then an even bigger issue emerged. It turns out Chloe wasn't actually pregnant. Chloe, who hadn't been focused on her studies, seemed to think it was okay to later claim she had a miscarriage. She lied to her husband, claiming to be pregnant to elevate her social standing. Her husband became suspicious when Chloe's belly didn't grow, and upon investigating, he quickly uncovered her lie. Between Dad's antics at the wedding and her own dishonesty, Chloe's husband was understandably furious. Divorce is now on the table, and she's even facing demands for financial compensation in the divorce proceedings. Chloe, who had never really worked a day in her life and had almost no savings, found herself in a difficult situation, kicked out of the house by her husband, and with nowhere to go. After hearing Chloe's whole story, I felt sympathy, but when she cried for help, I realized something profound. Chloe and I are not truly sisters anymore. I'm not your sister anymore. I have no intention of helping you. And if Mom and Grandma are swayed by your tears, I'll do everything to stop them from supporting you. Live your own life, Chloe. Why won't you help me with that?" I said goodbye and hung up the phone on a crying Chloe. Afterward, I suggested that we didn't really need a landline phone anymore since we all have mobile phones. Both Mom and I have blocked Chloe's number, severing ties with her completely. Rumor has it that Chloe is now leading a life soaked in alcohol, struggling to make payments for the financial compensation demanded in her divorce. Maybe she really did inherit Dad's bad traits. As for me, Mom, and Grandma, the three of us are living peacefully in our accessible home. Grandma can now do many things she couldn't do before. She can cook her favorite meals and do laundry, and she shows a brighter smile, feeling that she contributes to the family. Mom's job is still demanding, but she seems a bit more relaxed now that Chloe, the problematic child, is out of the picture. As for me, without the constant worry about Chloe potentially hurting Grandma, I can focus better on my work. My hard work has been acknowledged, and my superiors see a bright future for me. While taking good care of Mom and Grandma, I'm living my days in happiness.
Things seemed fine as I returned home to grab something I forgot, until I overheard my husband chatting in the living room. He was talking about how everything was going smoothly according to their plan. It shocked me to hear him and my mother-in-law talking about getting rid of me, their daughter-in-law. Despite living together peacefully until then, it was clear they harbored deep hatred towards me. Normally, I might have confronted them, but because of my profession as a police officer, I decided against it. That day marked the beginning of my struggle to expose their evil intentions. My name is Michelle Kimball. I've been married to Dave, who is 3 years older than me, for 3 years now. We met at a traffic safety class held at Dave's workplace back when I was working as a police officer in the traffic department. It was my first traffic safety class, and I was pretty nervous because I'm not great at speaking in front of people. Luckily, Dave helped me out, and we became friends afterward. He started a conversation to help calm my nerves, which I'll always remember. Since we got married, we haven't had any kids yet. I wanted one soon after our wedding, but Dave wasn't too keen on the idea. He kept saying we needed to save more money because raising a child is expensive, even though we both had stable jobs and were financially secure. He avoided talking about having kids, which bothered me a lot. And I wasn't the only one bothered by it. My mother-in-law, Judy, was always worried too. At first, she hoped for a grandchild. But as time went by, she seemed to blame me for not having one. She'd say things like, "Michelle, you're not getting any younger. You should hurry up and have a baby. If a woman can't have her husband's child, she's just like a maid." When I told Dave what Judy said, he'd get upset and defensive, saying things like, "Are you saying this is my fault? I'm tired from work, and you're just making it worse. If you really want a kid, why don't you try harder?" He'd also start criticizing my appearance whenever we talked about it. On top of everything, Dave seems to prefer the flashy fashion of younger girls, which doesn't really suit me as I'm approaching my 30s. I've explained to him many times that I can't dress too extravagantly because my job requires me to be ready for sudden calls. But he just doesn't seem to get it. He thinks a wife who doesn't prioritize her appearance is failing as a woman and tells me to reflect on myself before complaining to him. I regretted marrying him when I realized that the once kind-hearted Dave could have such a nasty attitude. 2 years after we got married, my work schedule changed, and we started spending less and less time together as our days off rarely matched. Even when we planned to do something together, Dave would casually bail on me for other plans, like going fishing with his coworkers. He'd apologize, but his smirk showed he didn't really mean it. It felt like he was always off having fun on his own, while I was left feeling disappointed and betrayed, even on days when I just wanted a quiet day at home. My mother-in-law has a habit of showing up unannounced, always ready with a comment. "Where's Dave?" She'd ask. "Oh, off fishing with some girl," I'd reply. Then she'd make some snide remark about him preferring other company over mine. I hate having to deal with her insensitivity, but I can't just brush her off and leave. So instead, I spend my weekends listening to her comments. "You two don't seem like you're going to have kids," she'd say, pushing her opinions on us. "You should be more proactive. You're the wife, right?" I try to explain that I'm doing my best, but Dave isn't exactly enthusiastic about it due to money concerns. But then she'd pry into my finances, asking how much I earn. I hesitated to tell her, but eventually gave her a slightly lower figure than the truth. She seemed disappointed and made a comparison to some rich person, insinuating that my salary wasn't enough for having a child. I wish she wouldn't compare me, a public servant, to someone wealthy. Something about my mother-in-law's behavior began to unsettle me, and it was just the beginning of a troubling turn of events. From that day on, she started openly harassing me. She began showing up at our house more frequently, sometimes almost half the days of the week. Once, I returned home from work to find her there, having let herself in with a spare key, and she was blatantly cooking dinner. She'd make snide comments about me prioritizing work over home, even though I'm not a housewife, and suggest that women without children have it easy. Her remarks made me feel sick, and there were times when she'd rudely wake me up after I'd worked a night shift, criticizing me for sleeping in. She'd imply that if I slept late due to my job, I wasn't fulfilling my duties as a wife, and it's no wonder men look for other women. Despite my protests, she forced me to eat breakfast. It was all becoming too much to bear. Gradually, everything I ate started to lose its flavor, sometimes even tasting bitter. This went on for over a month, and with the stress and lack of sleep, I became so fatigued that even eating at home resulted in a rush to the bathroom. Instead of showing concern, Dave made it clear that he was annoyed by my weary face. "You look so downcast all the time. It brings me down too. You've handed all the housework over to Mom. At least try to look cheerful," he'd say. My mother-in-law would come in and nitpick whenever I was too busy to do the housework, which Dave seemed to notice. But despite my attempts to communicate, Dave would just ignore me and watch TV. He wouldn't listen to me, but he'd laugh at trivial celebrity gossip on TV, which only added to my frustration. Dave, you've stopped making eye contact and talking to me recently. You even started canceling plans with me on your days off. Are you having an affair? I finally confronted him. His reaction was explosive. An affair? What an accusation, he yelled back. I have work obligations. It's easy for you to say without knowing the hardships. Or are you feeling this way because you're the one having an affair? His face turned red with anger, leaving me speechless and shocked by his outburst. Moreover, Dave lashed out and smashed a vase that was on the table, scattering shards all the way to my feet. That's way too much even for you, I said, feeling scared of my husband for the first time. From then on, incidents like that kept happening, leaving me restless even when I was at home. One day, due to work circumstances, I had to be away from home for a few days. On the day of my business trip, I left the house but realized I had forgotten my important planner at the front door. I rushed back home to retrieve it, but I felt awkward about facing Dave again after our recent fight over his comment about my trip. When I returned home, I quietly opened the front door and saw Judy's shoes. Not wanting to encounter my mother-in-law, I gently picked up my planner from the shoe cabinet and was about to leave when I overheard their conversation. We've got everything we need. Everything's going as planned. Shall we push Daisy soon? Yeah, but the effects are not showing up as expected. She's been rushing to the toilet after every meal. It should be soon, right? I couldn't believe my ears at their chilling talk. What on earth were they planning? Quickly, I grabbed the voice recorder I always carry and started recording, unaware that they were being recorded. The two in the room were cheerfully discussing their outrageous plan. Maybe we should increase the life insurance payout. That should be enough to pay off Mom's debt, right? That would help, and you wouldn't have to see her ugly face every day, one of them said. I was so shocked I caught my breath. I couldn't believe they were planning such things, even if they didn't like me. Furthermore, I heard them laughing disdainfully, saying even if we tell the cops, the traffic cop won't suspect a thing. Gradually, anger overwhelmed my sadness, and I vowed to take revenge on them. During the business trip, I spent time pondering how to get back at my husband. Perhaps due to my gloomy demeanor, my colleagues expressed their concern, and I ended up venting to them. That's when I heard an unexpected piece of information from one of them. Apparently, a little while ago, there was a call about a drunk causing a ruckus in a gentleman's club. When they rushed to the scene, the man causing the disturbance was none other than Dave. Dave's behavior at the club was shocking, especially since he was someone who attended our wedding, and they immediately recognized him. He claimed the woman he was with was his girlfriend and threatened anyone who touched her. He caused a scene by holding one of the female employees tightly, kicking tables, and causing a ruckus. It was clear that it wasn't just a drunken declaration. They were genuinely in a relationship. Suddenly, all of my husband's past actions made sense. Surprisingly, I didn't get much shock. Rather, I felt energized to thoroughly investigate my husband's infidelity. Watch out, I thought. I won't let this go as it is. A week later, my husband started speaking to me in a gentle tone, similar to when we first started dating. Suspicious of his sudden change, he presented me with a document. Michelle, you always have such a dangerous job with the police, and that's amazing. I'm proud as a husband, but I can't help but worry. As I looked at the application form for life insurance that Dave handed me, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still planning to go through with their scheme. Despite my doubts, I wanted to believe in Dave one last time. Do you really think I'm at risk of being targeted? Would you worry about me? I asked him, looking straight into his eyes. Please reconsider, I pleaded. But to my dismay, my husband nodded with a broad smile. Of course. That's why you should sign this application form quickly, he insisted. I couldn't help but wonder if all he saw in me now was the life insurance payout he would get in exchange for my life. He truly seemed like a good-for-nothing man to the core. But strangely, thanks to him, I felt empowered to carry out my retribution without hesitation. Well, in this world, you never know who might come after you, he remarked. There are so many dangerous incidents these days. For example, having a family member with a foolish idea. His words sent a chill down my spine. Like planning to get rid of a nuisance wife to be with a young mistress, I added, seeing his discomfort as his eyes darted nervously around. He seemed to realize he'd been caught. Being instigated by a debt-ridden mother to send the daughter-in-law to the afterlife with a large life insurance policy, I continued, watching his expression change. "Wait a minute, are you?" he started. But I cut him off, playing the recording from the voice recorder. Out came my mother-in-law's conversation and crude laughter, grotesquely destroying my husband's face. "How did you get this recording?" he demanded, shocked. "I happened to overhear it," I replied calmly. It was a good thing I was carrying a voice recorder. If I'd always been a traffic cop, I wouldn't carry one around. "Huh? Aren't you still in the traffic department?" Dave asked, seemingly surprised. "I'm in the detective division now. I told you, didn't I?" "Well, I guess you weren't listening since you were too preoccupied with a certain woman," I retorted. I confronted my husband Dave with photos of his affair that he had hidden in his room. These were undeniable pieces of evidence I found while rummaging through our house when he wasn't around. "What? I don't know anything about these photos. I don't even know this woman," Dave insisted. "Oh, really? She seems to be a girl working in a high-end nightclub. You don't know her? The club where you got drunk and caused a scene, apparently shouting that she was your woman. How charming. How much do you even know?" I confronted him. Cornered, Dave desperately began to make excuses, not caring about appearances anymore. "It's all my mom's fault. After she heard about me dating the nightclub girl, she started saying that I should marry her instead of you, who earns less. She was the one who tempted me," he explained. Dave's words made sense to me. When my mother-in-law, Judy, heard about my salary and called it low, she must have been comparing it to Dave's mistress. According to the conversations I recorded with a voice recorder, Judy had a substantial amount of debt. It was foolish to think that they were planning to use my life insurance payout and the nightclub girl's income to pay off that debt. "So you're saying the plan came from your mom?" I asked, seeking clarification. "Yes, so I'm not to blame," Dave replied. "What are you talking about? The whole thing started because you had an affair in the first place. It's despicable to blame others." "I'll never forgive you," I yelled, my anger boiling over. Suddenly, Dave let out an incomprehensible scream and grabbed my collar. Reacting quickly, I grabbed his hand and threw him onto the floor. "I'm a police officer, Dave. I'm used to dealing with violent men like you. I can protect myself without life insurance," I asserted, standing strong in front of Dave, who was groaning in pain from hitting his back. With a firm hand, I took out my handcuffs. "You're under arrest," I declared. Dave's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's a joke, right?" he stammered. Seeing his reaction, Dave suddenly became weak and started apologizing. "I'm sorry. It was just a moment of weakness. Please forgive me," he pleaded. "Save your excuses for the police station. I'll listen to them thoroughly when the time comes," I responded sternly. Eventually, Dave and Judy were imprisoned for their plot to make me an outcast. I divorced Dave and sued both him and his mistress for $20,000 in emotional damages. While they might be released soon as it was an attempted crime, Dave losing his job and having to pay the emotional damages along with Judy's debt means they will undoubtedly face a tough life ahead. Meanwhile, I'm thoroughly enjoying living alone for the first time in years. Having been forced to live a cramped life for so long, I decided to spread my wings for a while.
Hey, are you kidding me? Why is Mom eating those? That's what my husband said to me on the phone. He had been away for work for 5 years. Our relationship hadn't been great, and when we did talk, we often argued. Suddenly, he came back to the house where my mother-in-law and I lived. He sent me homemade cookies, but my mother-in-law started eating them without asking. When I told my husband, he panicked. Then my mother-in-law collapsed. I rushed her to the emergency room, where I found out the truth. I called the police. "My name is Eleanor. I'm 35, and I work at a nail salon. I met my husband Daniel on a blind date organized by my colleagues. I wasn't keen on dating, but they tricked me into going. It turned out to be a good thing because that's where I met Daniel. He works in real estate like me. We bonded over our love for cooking. Even though I'm good at cooking, his dishes amazed me. I suggested he should do it professionally, but he said he preferred keeping it as a hobby. We exchanged numbers and made plans to meet again. A few days later, I got invited to Daniel's house. I was a bit nervous when I arrived. but there was a huge feast on the table. It looked amazing and tasted delicious. I got so caught up in enjoying the food that I noticed Daniel looking at me happily. After we finished eating, he confessed his feelings to me, and we decided to start dating. We dated for 3 years, during which he cooked delicious meals for me. I gained a bit of weight because of all the good food, but I also learned how to cook better thanks to him. We traveled to many places together, searching for more tasty dishes. During those 3 years, we never had any big fights. My work was going well, and I felt truly happy with him. On my birthday, at the end of those 3 years, he proposed to me. I cried when I saw the sparkling ring because I knew I wanted to spend every day with him. I was filled with happiness. Meeting my in-laws and the wedding ceremony went smoothly. Both of them are gentle and kind, just like Daniel. They welcomed me warmly, treating me like their own daughter. They've been married for 30 years and are very close, which makes me want to have a strong bond with Daniel as we grow old together. Unfortunately, we won't see them often because they live far away from us. Life with my husband was going smoothly. He often prepared meals for me, and coming home to a feast always lifted my spirits after a long day at work. His cooking seemed to erase all the fatigue from my day, and he would watch me happily as I ate, just like when we first started dating. After 3 years of marriage, our happy days took a sad turn. My father-in-law suddenly passed away after collapsing at work. Both my husband and I struggled to come to terms with the loss, but it hit my mother-in-law the hardest. They were very close, so her grief was understandable. I didn't know what to say to comfort her when I saw her crying in the hospital, and even after the funeral, she remained exhausted. She eventually quit her job, unable to cope with the loss. We tried to support her by visiting often, but she didn't seem to improve. Each time I saw her, I wondered how I could help her feel better. Then one day, my husband suggested that his mother come live with us. I was surprised by the idea, but I understood that he was her only family and she needed support. Although I wished he had discussed it with me beforehand, I agreed. When his mother asked if I was okay with it, I reassured her with a smile. Living together seemed to brighten her spirits more than anything else had in a long time. To be honest, I was a bit nervous about living with my mother-in-law because I hadn't anticipated it. However, she's a calm and gentle person, so I hoped things would remain as peaceful as when it was just my husband and me. At first, I didn't think much about us moving in together, but soon after we started living together, I realized I had been naive. A few days in, my mother-in-law welcomed me home and mentioned she had done some chores, like hanging out the laundry. I thanked her politely and went to check the laundry, only to find that she had washed clothes I had set aside for hand washing. They had shrunk and the colors had run onto my other clothes. I was shocked because those were my favorite items. I wondered if she hadn't noticed when she hung them out to dry, but I realized I hadn't explained it to her either. So softly, I told her not to wash the clothes I planned to hand wash next time. However, she didn't respond, and I regretted bringing it up. Despite my requests, she kept putting the hand wash items in the washing machine repeatedly. Sometimes, my wet clothes were left in the machine, and clothes I meant to wash ended up in the trash. After 2 weeks of this, I felt like I was being harassed. Whenever I politely warned her, she either ignored me or gave insincere apologies. It felt like a never-ending cycle. I tried washing my items at night and asking her to stay out of my room, but the small harassments continued. When I talked to my husband about it, he couldn't believe it and dismissed it as a misunderstanding. He wished it was just a mistake, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I felt incredibly frustrated with my husband for not believing me. Then, one day, my mother-in-law mentioned she had cleaned the house. When I checked the trash, I found my practice nail tools, which I had been using since vocational school, thrown away. These tools were precious to me, and seeing them discarded made me lose my temper. I yelled at my mother-in-law, asking her not to throw away my tools and to be more considerate with the laundry, accusing her of deliberately trying to harass me. She defended herself, saying she only threw them away because they were dirty and she seemed oblivious to any wrongdoing. Her casual dismissal infuriated me further, especially when she called my beloved nail tools dirty. I kept shouting until my husband suddenly appeared behind me. He was shocked and asked what was going on. My mother-in-law quickly painted me as the aggressor, claiming I was saying untrue things about her. When I tried to defend myself, my husband sided with her, implying that I was overreacting and shouldn't be upset with her, especially knowing she wasn't well. I was deeply upset that my husband didn't listen to me and sided with my mother-in-law. Despite my tears and protests, her harassment continued, and our arguments became more frequent. Our relationship deteriorated, and he stopped cooking for us like he used to. I often wished we could go back to the happier times before we moved in with her. The only relief was that she didn't harass me when my husband was home. But one day, he dropped a bombshell. He was being transferred to a new place alone. I was shocked and asked why, but he said he had already decided and thought I would object if he told me earlier. He seemed indifferent to how I felt and brushed off my concerns about living with his mother. I pleaded for him not to leave, but he insisted on his decision, even shouting at me to accept it. He left for his new job alone, leaving me to face life with my mother-in-law, which turned into a living hell. In addition to the harassment over laundry and cleaning, my favorite dishes and clothes were thrown away, and my packages were opened without my permission. The situation worsened day by day, and my husband rarely came home. When he did, it was to accuse me of bullying his mother based on her complaints. I would deny the accusations, leading to fights both at home with my mother-in-law and on the phone with my husband. I was exhausted from the constant conflict. Work became my only respite, and I was grateful to have a job. About a year into living with my mother-in-law, I returned home from work to find her eating cookies. I ignored her and started preparing dinner when my husband called. Although I assumed it was about my mother-in-law again, I answered. To my surprise, he asked if I enjoyed the homemade cookies he made. It then hit me that it was Valentine's Day, a day he never acknowledged before. He never came home on my birthday or our anniversary, nor did he ever send gifts. I realized the cookies my mother-in-law was enjoying were the ones my husband had made. She had opened my package and helped herself without permission. When I coldly informed him of this, he seemed shocked. As we argued over the phone, there was a sudden loud noise behind us, and my mother-in-law collapsed. I hung up hastily, unable to understand what had just happened. My mother-in-law looked distressed and began convulsing, so I called an ambulance. She was rushed to the hospital and received emergency treatment, thankfully avoiding serious injury. However, the doctor's words shocked me. She may have eaten poisonous mushrooms. I couldn't fathom how poisonous mushrooms could end up in cookies, but it was the only explanation I could think of. I informed the doctor and called the police. They arrived promptly and discovered the poisonous mushrooms in the cookies my husband had sent me. I couldn't comprehend why my husband would do such a thing. His happiness when he asked if I had eaten the cookies now seemed suspicious. Frustrated and upset, I informed the police of his whereabouts and returned to the hospital. When my mother-in-law woke up, I told her about the poisonous mushrooms. She began to cry and apologized, admitting her envy of my happiness led her to mistreat me. She explained that my husband had instructed her to feed me the poisoned cookies as punishment for her badmouthing me. She expressed remorse and acknowledged my husband's extreme actions. Despite her attempts to dissuade him, he dismissed it as harmless, believing it would only cause a slight stomachache. I couldn't believe what my mother-in-law revealed. The cookies were meant to be the reason I would ask for a divorce. She thought she was only causing me a stomachache. She even considered eating them herself to protect her son from criminal charges if anything happened to me. Her story left me trembling. This wasn't something that could be resolved with just an apology. She was complicit, and I couldn't bear to see her face again. I told her as much, despite her continuous apologies. On my way home, I received a call from the police informing me that my husband had been arrested. That was the final straw. I quickly packed my belongings and returned to my parents' house, needing to distance myself from the chaos and betrayal. After my husband's release, I asked him to proceed with the divorce papers through my lawyer, and eventually, the divorce was finalized, with me receiving alimony. Shockingly, my lawyer revealed that my husband had been having an affair before he moved out. It was with a colleague at work, and apparently, the strained relationship between my mother-in-law and me contributed to it. Learning this made me realize how I had endured years of turmoil, hoping my husband would return to his former self. If I had known the truth, I would have sought a divorce much sooner. I never imagined that something as innocent as his cooking would lead to such trouble. Following his release, my husband lost his job due to the arrest and the rumors of his affair within the company. The woman he had the affair with also lost her job. Now he lives with his mother, struggling financially due to his criminal record and debts from the affair. Ironically, my mother-in-law now harasses him as she did me, giving him a taste of what I went through. It took me a while to recover from the shock, but with the support of my family, I found the strength to move forward. I decided to fulfill my long-time dream of opening a home-based nail salon using my alimony and savings. The day of the salon's opening was filled with congratulations from my former colleagues, and I felt immense joy seeing my dream come true. Now, working as a nail artist brings me happiness, and I'm grateful for the busy schedule and the smiles of my satisfied customers. Despite the hardships, I found peace and fulfillment in doing what I love. I'm a 33-year-old office worker, and my husband Tony is 5 years older. We've been married for 7 years, but currently I'm living with my mother due to some circumstances. You might wonder how I ended up in this situation. Well, let's go back a few years. Tony and I decided to build a house together. At that time, Tony had just switched jobs, and we didn't have much money saved up. His previous job at a big company was tough on him. He faced harassment from his boss, which made him lose sleep and eventually become unable to work. He tried taking a break and seeing a psychiatrist, but it didn't help much, so he had to quit. For a while, we managed on my income alone. After 2 months of being unemployed, Tony started feeling better. He ate and slept well again, and his psychiatrist was pleased with his progress. It was a relief to see him back to his old self. He started looking for a new job, but it wasn't easy because of his previous resignation due to mental health issues. Eventually, he found a job at a smaller company, although it paid less than his previous one. Still, he was happy to be working again, and it was in a field he liked. We wanted to have kids, but with the uncertainty of Tony's job situation and our financial stability, we decided to put that on hold. Then, a new challenge arose. My mother, Karen, had a traffic accident and became paralyzed, needing to use a wheelchair. Since my dad passed away when I was in middle school, Karen had been living alone in our old family home, which wasn't suitable for her condition. Tony suggested we all live together, which surprised both me and my mom, but I appreciated his kindness. Despite Tony's recent job change, we decided to apply for a mortgage to buy a house suitable for all of us. It was tough to get approved because Tony hadn't been at his new job for long. But we didn't give up. We kept trying, and eventually, after exploring different options, we succeeded in getting the loan approved. We finally decided to buy our own home. It's been a dream of mine to live in a cozy place, with wooden beams on the ceiling, custom storage, and a kitchen that fits my height perfectly. We wanted a spacious, wheelchair-friendly, single-story house, and we were excited for it to be finished. We visited the construction site often, eagerly awaiting its completion. When it was done, we were thrilled. The house even had a big yard where my mom, who's been feeling hesitant to go out since her accident, could enjoy the sun. But there was one problem. The land where we built our house was a gift from Tony's grandfather, who loved him dearly. Sadly, he got diagnosed with cancer, and he decided to divide his assets among his family. Tony got the biggest plot of land, but it was just a short walk from his family's home. When we told them my mom would be moving in with us, Tony's sister and mother weren't happy. They made hurtful comments, saying awful things about me and my mom. But Tony stood up for us, saying it was his grandfather's wish for us to have the land. Tony's family can be really mean sometimes, but Tony himself is kind-hearted. He always says he learned from their bad behavior. To me, he's like a beautiful flower growing from mud. Tony's grandfather also gave land to Tony's sister, although smaller, but it came with a parking lot that brings in good income. I would have preferred that, but I'm grateful for what we received. Thanks to Tony's grandfather, we could build our house without worrying about the land cost. It made a huge difference when getting a loan. After the house was finished, we invited Tony's family over. During construction, we found out that Tony's family had been visiting the house without our permission. They showed up late, with no apology, claiming it was kind of like their house too because of Tony's grandfather's connection. They even walked in with muddy shoes, ignoring the slippers we provided. The atmosphere was tense from the start, and they came empty-handed. They toured the rooms, and when they saw my mom's spacious room, my mother-in-law declared she wanted to live there. Then she made insensitive comments to my mom about her accident, implying it was a stroke of luck to move from her old place to our nice house. I was furious, but before I could say anything, Tony spoke up. He called out their rude behavior, demanding an apology. Instead of apologizing, they turned on us, accusing Tony of being arrogant for standing up to them. They even insulted me, calling me a jinx. Tony didn't back down. He firmly confronted them, refusing to tolerate their disrespect. They looked frustrated, but Tony stood his ground. As the tense situation unfolded, my mother, who had been silently observing, apologized with a regretful expression. She explained that she's living with us because of an accident she had, and she genuinely appreciated Tony's kindness. Feeling guilty, Tony's mother and sister left, shooting us nasty looks. Later, my mom apologized to Tony for upsetting his family, expressing regret for the incident during the housewarming party. Tony, being the compassionate person he is, apologized back, acknowledging their lack of decency. Despite the rough start, my mom felt grateful to be living with us. 4 months passed, and we started settling into our new home. My mom began to smile more, and our neighbors, who knew Tony since childhood, were kind to us. But then, I received a call at work. Tony had collapsed at work. Rushing to the hospital, I hoped for the best. But the sight of Tony hooked up to tubes shattered me. The doctor's grim prognosis left me numb. Despite my prayers, Tony didn't make it. He passed away suddenly. In my state of shock, my mother and sister-in-law showed up, hurling accusations at me. They insinuated that I had something to do with Tony's death, calling me a jinx like my mom. I was too devastated to respond. My mom arrived distraught, and seeing her tears finally allowed me to cry too. Amidst our grief, Tony's mother declared she never wanted to see us again, blaming me for her son's death. With heavy hearts, we arranged Tony's funeral, mourning the loss of a beloved husband and son. We went to the funeral home, still in disbelief over Tony's sudden death from a subarachnoid hemorrhage. He had seemed perfectly fine that morning. When I informed my mother-in-law about the funeral schedule, she surprised me by saying she wouldn't attend because Tony always sided with us. She also mentioned her daughter wouldn't come either. At the viewing, many of Tony's colleagues and friends showed up, but neither my mother nor my sister-in-law and her husband were there. It was shocking, but it seemed to fit their character. Still, many people attended the funeral, showing how much Tony was loved. It was comforting to spend time with those who genuinely missed him. After Tony's death, I received an inappropriate email from my mother-in-law, asking about the life insurance money. I ignored it, unable to deal with such matters. When we returned home, we noticed a light on in the house, despite us turning everything off before leaving. Entering cautiously, we found my sister-in-law and her husband there, claiming they were taking over the house. They had sold our belongings and replaced them with their own, considering our things bad luck since Tony had used them. Their callousness stunned us. They even casually mentioned selling our belongings and seemed unfazed by our shock and anger. My mom and I were speechless, unable to comprehend their audacity. I called the resale company, explaining the situation and they agreed to treat the items as stolen and return them. After this betrayal, I wanted nothing to do with Tony's family anymore. As I grappled with my emotions about staying in the house filled with memories of Tony, my mother whispered to me, asking what Tony would say. Perhaps he'd suggest we leave. He always valued spending time with those who understood us and saw dealing with certain people as a waste of time. Realizing that Tony's family would likely continue interfering if we stayed, I impulsively leased an accessible apartment. I made a deal with my mother and sister-in-law to cut ties with us in exchange for moving out. Thus, a new chapter began with just my mother and me in the apartment. Tony had multiple life insurance policies, which now provided us financial security. He had always joked about leaving us wealthy when he passed away, and he made good on that promise. Since I had bought the house under my name due to Tony's inability to secure a mortgage, it was safe from repossession. However, when 3 months passed without paying the mortgage, I started receiving furious calls from Jessica and Linda, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. They were furious that the house was being sold, as they had been living there. They had to move out, and Linda even sold her own house due to gambling problems. Despite their pleas for money and reconciliation, I decided to cut ties with them completely. With the help of a lawyer, the house was sold without much trouble, providing us with a moment of relief. With the money Tony left us, my mother and I plan to find a new, smaller home where we can prioritize security and start afresh. We settled on a condominium with minimal noise disturbance, ready to move forward with our lives without the chaos and toxicity of Tony's family. I remembered something Tony always said when we were building our home, that people can draw energy from the sun. With that in mind, he created a spacious courtyard for my mother-in-law to enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden without feeling self-conscious. So when looking for a new place, I searched for a condo with a large balcony where she could enjoy her coffee and her books. Although our new condo is smaller than our previous home, it still has enough space for the furniture Tony carefully chose. With the money from selling the house, I was able to buy a luxurious condominium with top-notch security, which would surely put Tony's worrying mind at ease. Meanwhile, rumors about my in-laws' situation started circulating among our old neighbors. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family were left homeless, even trying to borrow money from neighbors with no success. Eventually, they ended up in public housing but continued to face troubles due to their stubbornness. They caused disturbances in the neighborhood, like having loud arguments and even having a barbecue on their small balcony, which shocked the locals. My sister-in-law's husband had left a while ago, leaving her and Linda, my mother-in-law, to live together in a noisy environment. In contrast, my mother and I enjoyed a peaceful life in our new home. Despite both being two-member households, the neighbors rallied together to try to get my in-laws evicted due to their disruptive behavior. It's a clear example that causing trouble won't win you any favor anywhere. I just want to live peacefully and quietly, away from the embarrassment of my estranged family. I believe Tony is watching over us. So from now on, I'll live my life without causing trouble to others and strive to live not just for myself, but also for Tony's memory. My name is Avery, and at 62, I find myself in a new chapter of life. Once a dedicated housewife, I now navigate a more modest existence following the sudden passing of my husband 2 years ago. Left with the responsibility of managing the finances he left behind, I've adjusted to solitude, my 2 sons now grown and married. When my eldest, Henry, tied the knot, he and his wife, Rhea, extended a generous offer to share their home with me. Grateful for their concern yet adamant about maintaining my independence, I politely declined. But Henry's insistence was unwavering, citing his reluctance to leave me alone. And so, against my initial reservations, we became housemates. Rhea, a mere 23 years old, entered my life as my daughter-in-law. Though her youth initially concerned me, I trusted Henry's judgment. Upon our decision to cohabit, I sought reassurance from Henry regarding Rhea's feelings, His affirmation of her kindness and willingness to help around the house put my mind at ease. Yet, amidst our shared living arrangement, a minor incident brought forth a twinge of concern. Needing assistance with household tasks one day, I approached Rhea while I embarked on errands. However, preoccupied with her phone, she declined, citing business. Though unaccustomed to such reluctance, I chose to remain silent, preferring to maintain harmony over confrontation. That particular day, witnessing Rhea engrossed in her game, I mustered a firmer tone, requesting her assistance with chores before indulging in leisure. With evident annoyance, she grumbled about constant nagging and suggested a fair share of responsibilities among us. Despite her reluctance, she begrudgingly attended to the laundry, shooting me a glare that caught me off guard. Opting against escalating the tension, I left the house as it stood. Following that altercation, Rhea's attitude took a turn for the worse, manifesting in daily acts of disregard. Her discontent extended to my cooking, prompting her to urge Henry for dining out, leaving me behind. Though Henry attempted to mediate, reminding Rhea of my efforts, his allegiance often swayed with her mood, leaving me with apologies rather than resolutions. Requests for assistance with household chores were met with criticism instead of cooperation, further compounded by Rhea's belief in my supposed idleness. Despite my contributions to Henry's expenses and managing the apartment, I found myself unjustly labeled as dependent. Rhea's perception of superiority, stemming from her role as Henry's provider, clouded any recognition of my financial contributions. An ordinary act like vacuuming became a source of contention when Rhea berated me for noise, venting her frustrations to an unseen listener. Feeling exasperated, I confided in Henry upon his return, highlighting my frustration with Rhea's lack of involvement in household duties and her unjust criticism. I stressed the importance of sharing household responsibilities, especially when complaints arose, as I couldn't manage everything alone. While Henry apologized and promised to address the issue with Rhea, his response left me feeling uncertain about the seriousness of the matter. Nevertheless, I opted to wait, hoping for a change without further confrontation. However, 6 months passed, and Rhea's attitude remained unchanged, leaving me utterly exhausted from shouldering the burden of household duties alone, despite my efforts to accommodate her. Around that time, Lucas brought up my upcoming birthday, suggesting an early celebration since my eldest son and his wife would likely be occupied on the actual day. Renly, Lucas's wife, had a thoughtful present for me, and they graciously invited me to dinner at their place, a short journey away. Despite our infrequent meetings, Renly's kindness made the invitation all the more special, and I eagerly accepted. After preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I joined Lucas and his family for the celebration. They had arranged for us to dine at my favorite restaurant and presented me with flowers and a gift bag, making it a truly delightful evening. Overwhelmed with happiness, I couldn't help but express how rejuvenating the experience was, remarking, "Ah, this is so healing. I haven't felt this happy in a long time." Lucas, sensing a hint of sadness beneath my words, gently inquired if everything was all right with Henry. Although I hadn't intended to burden them with my troubles, I found solace in confiding in them about my struggles. How I bore the brunt of household chores due to Rhea's reluctance to help and endured her harsh words. After a heartfelt discussion with Renly, Lucas reassured me that I didn't have to endure such hardships, reminding me of the financial stability provided by the stocks and apartment rents left by my husband. He reiterated that my living arrangement with Henry was solely his choice and offered their home as a refuge if I ever felt lonely or overwhelmed. Overwhelmed with gratitude for the support of my family, I resolved to persevere a little longer, knowing I had allies by my side. Expressing my heartfelt appreciation, I assured them, "Thank you, but I'll put in a bit more effort. They're my precious family." Returning home that evening, I noticed the dishes they had used still sitting in the sink. With a resigned sigh, I considered taking care of them myself, but opted to leave them for Henry and Rhea to address in the morning. The following day, while preparing breakfast, I politely asked Rhea to wash the dishes she had used the previous day. However, she disregarded my request, engrossed in her phone on the couch. Unable to contain my frustration at Ria's dismissive attitude, I raised my voice, reminding her of the basic courtesy of cleaning up after oneself. In response, Ria shifted the responsibility onto me, citing the adage, "He who does not work neither shall he eat." Henry, overhearing our exchange, appeared puzzled and sought clarification. I explained that I had simply requested Ria to attend to the dishes they had used. Despite Henry's attempts to intervene and help, Ria insisted that it was my duty, dismissing my efforts and labeling me a burden. Frustration bubbling to the surface, I couldn't suppress my emotions any longer, expressing the overwhelming strain of shouldering all household responsibilities, including Henry's share. Henry, realizing the gravity of the situation, apologized and offered assistance, but Ria adamantly rejected his help, exacerbating the tension by demanding that I vacate the apartment. Reaching my breaking point, I questioned Ria's assertion, asserting my right to remain in my own home. Turning to Henry, I laid bare my true sentiments, imploring him to understand the untenable situation. "Ria may be misunderstanding something, but you grasp the truth, don't you, Henry? The ones who must leave are you too. I cannot endure this living arrangement any longer." Having reached my limit, I made my stance clear. Ria, visibly taken aback, questioned my statement, unable to comprehend how a supposedly jobless mother-in-law could afford a residence. Patiently, I clarified that I am not a tenant. Rather, I am the landlord of this very apartment. Through diligent management of the assets left by Henry's father, including stocks, properties, and land, I sustained myself independently, without relying on Henry's financial support. Even after we began living together, I shouldered the majority of utility and grocery expenses. Ria's shock was palpable as she turned to Henry for confirmation. Further elaborating, I highlighted the impracticality of Henry single-handedly managing both her desires and the complexities of my life. I emphasized that despite his best intentions, his income alone couldn't sustain such demands. It was evident that Ria grasped the gravity of the situation as her face drained of color, prompting hurried apologies. They both expressed remorse in a flurry of apologies, acknowledging their ignorance and the hurtful nature of their words. While acknowledging our familial bond and their remorse, I made it clear that continuing to live together was untenable. I proposed that they seek a separate residence, allowing us to address this issue while maintaining our relationship. Henry, fraught with concern about leaving me alone, pledged to assist with household chores moving forward. However, I reassured him of my well-being, mentioning Lucas and his family's offer to provide support if needed. Initially, I had entertained the notion of persevering a little longer, but the current situation had made it abundantly clear that a change was imperative. I explained to Henry my decision to reside closer to Lucas and his family, a choice he eventually accepted with understanding. Ria, however, resorted to accusatory tones, blaming me for what she perceived as abandonment. Recognizing the futility of further discourse, I chose silence, understanding that some sentiments are better left unchallenged. Within a month of our discussion, Henry and Ria secured a new residence and relocated. However, constrained by rental costs, their options were limited to an aging, compact apartment. Ria, unaccustomed to employment, began a part-time job to supplement their finances, albeit with visible strain. Henry confided in me, revealing the constant friction plaguing their domestic life as Ria struggled to balance work and household responsibilities. Henry himself appeared weary, drained by the incessant conflicts. Despite their departure, Henry persisted in his pleas for reconciliation, expressing a desire to resume cohabitation with me. However, I remained resolute, having no intention of revisiting the tumultuous dynamics of our previous arrangement. Following their departure, I found solace in residing with Lucas and his family. Despite my insistence that they needn't inconvenience themselves, Lucas insisted that my presence enriched their lives. He revealed his mother's earnest desire to learn from me, particularly in the culinary arts, which ultimately led to our decision to live together. Since then, Lucas and his family have made it abundantly clear that my comfort and happiness are their utmost priorities. They've encouraged open communication, assuring me that any grievances will be addressed promptly and without hesitation. Together, we've fostered an environment of mutual respect and consideration, ensuring that we do not impose on each other unnecessarily. My days are now filled with joy as I cook alongside Renly and indulge in my hobbies, relishing in the fulfillment of each moment. Presently, I find myself content and at peace, determined to safeguard this newfound happiness moving forward. As I look to the future, my sole aspiration is to continue living in a manner that nurtures and preserves this profound sense of joy and contentment. Hi, I'm Amanda, and I'm 28 years old. I've been married to my husband Tom for 2 years now. We met in college and have been together since then. Tom works in a corporate job, while I decided not to go the traditional route and instead make money by investing in stocks and trading foreign currencies. Even though we're comfortable financially, my parents keep telling me to get a regular job. But Tom understands my choice and supports me. He's always been the person I can talk to about anything since we met in college. My family, on the other hand, doesn't really get my lifestyle, so we don't see each other as much. When we visited Tom's family to tell them about our marriage, they were curious about my job. Tom defended me, saying I was doing what I loved, but his brother Jeff kept pushing. When I finally told Jeff I was a part-timer, he made a snarky comment about how lots of college grads can't find stable jobs these days. It was frustrating dealing with his condescending attitude. I didn't let Jeff's comments get to me because marrying him was never part of the deal. Despite Tom's apologies for his brother's behavior, having Tom's support was what mattered most to me. Jeff, who often looked down on me, apparently holds a position as an associate professor at a university. I feel sorry for his students. Now Jeff is getting married, and Tom and I have been invited to the wedding. The bride-to-be is the daughter of the university president where Jeff works. With such a prestigious connection, Jeff's future seems secure. When Jeff saw me at the wedding, he started mocking me again, calling it embarrassing to have a part-timer like me as his sister-in-law. He even pointed out that my name wasn't listed in the wedding directory. I didn't understand what he meant at first, but when I checked, my name was the only one missing. Tom was ready to confront Jeff, but I told him not to bother. I didn't care about such things. Jeff smirked at my response and suggested that I, as a part-timer, should keep a low profile and not serve drinks at the wedding. He seemed to think it would cause trouble if people found out about my job. He even went as far as telling us not to serve drinks to avoid any awkward questions. With a smug attitude, he left us behind. Tom was still fuming with anger. "I'm sorry my brother has been incredibly rude," he apologized, his expression full of regret. Feeling guilty, I found myself apologizing too. "I should be the one saying sorry. I didn't mean for you to be upset because of me." Seeing me apologize, Tom finally managed to smile. But at the wedding, neither of us had the heart to celebrate. Instead, we followed Jeff's suggestion and just enjoyed the delicious food. As expected from a wedding of the university president's daughter, the food was extravagant, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. However, when we opened the gifts at home, we were stunned. Inside was a bowl with a portrait of Jeff and his wife. Even Tom, usually the more composed brother, was exasperated. "This is the last thing we need. I don't want to see my brother's face," he sighed. "But we can't just throw it away, and it's not something we can use." But I immediately thought of a solution. The bowl was the perfect size and depth for our cat's dish. "Can we use it for the cat's food? Would that be disrespectful to your brother?" I asked Tom. He replied with laughter, "It's perfect for the cat's food. The idea of my brother and his wife being licked by the cat every day is refreshing." With Tom's approval, the gift bowl became our cat's dish. A month later, I had to make a few visits to the university where Jeff worked. I dreaded running into him, especially since he had joined the university after marrying the president's daughter. However, I thought I'd be safe since the campus was vast, and I had to visit a different department from where he worked. But my luck ran out as I bumped into Jeff right away. When he saw me, he looked surprised. I quickly looked away and pretended not to notice him, hoping to avoid any confrontation. But Jeff approached me and started questioning. "Why the hell are you here?" "I'm calling the police for trespassing." His loud voice attracted a crowd of students. He began mocking me, asking if I had come to the university just to eat cheap lunch at the cafeteria. Feeling shy and embarrassed, I fell silent. But Jeff seemed to find my silence amusing and continued to ridicule me, telling the surrounding students that I was just a part-timer who hadn't achieved much after college. I could feel the students giggling, and I felt like crying. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a familiar professor intervened from behind. I felt relieved to see them. "What on earth is happening?" they asked. "She's my invited guest, my brother-in-law," they declared. Jeff was momentarily taken aback by the unexpected defense, but he quickly retorted, "Isn't there some kind of mistake? This girl is just a part-timer." Another professor, who arrived late and knew me, corrected Jeff, saying, "She is not a part-timer. She's a research collaborator in the economics department." Despite the other professor's attempt to clarify, Jeff remained unconvinced. Ever since marrying the president's daughter, he had become increasingly condescending, even towards senior professors. Sensing the futility of arguing with Jeff, the professor who had invited me took my hand and guided me away from the situation. As we left, the students dispersed, but Jeff seemed intent on following me. Ignoring the presence of senior professors in the room, Jeff barged in and continued his verbal attack, calling me derogatory names and questioning why I was wandering around the university. His offensive words caused the senior professors to panic, and one of them quickly ushered Jeff out of the room. However, I overheard him whispering to Tom that his career was over. Jeff's disregard for the consequences of his actions seemed apparent. With the president's support, he appeared to have no fear. But at that moment, the president entered the room. He immediately apologized to me, expressing deep regret for Jeff's behavior, and the other professors followed suit. In response, I calmly stated that I didn't mind, though inside I was seething with anger. Despite not planning to meet with the president that day, it seemed he had come for some reason. Unexpectedly, I've been collaborating on research with the professors in the economics department of this university. We're verifying the theory I use in my stock and forex investment operations. Ever since my university days, I've been conducting financial transactions based on my unique theory. A professor I connected with on social media noticed my successful investment performance and began verifying it with me. As a result, I started being invited to the university as a research collaborator. The university has even suggested that I work as a lecturer. But public speaking isn't my strong suit, so it's not an option for me. Since participating in the research also benefits my investments, I visit the university a few times a month to confirm the results. It wasn't until Jeff's wedding that I realized it was the same university where he works. When I looked at the guest list and recognized a name, I discovered that the president of the university was the bride's father. Despite other university-related guests being present, it seemed that no one noticed me. My name had been removed from the list, and I had been instructed not to serve drinks, so I stayed in my seat throughout the event. With such a grand wedding, nobody was expected to pay attention to someone as inconspicuous as me. The reason the president and professors were in a panic when Jeff confronted me is because I'm a major donor to the university. Since I started collaborating on research, my investment performance has significantly improved, and I've been donating a substantial amount of money each year. In addition to my research at the university, the theories I'm working on are also being shared with hedge funds and investors abroad. This has led to a significant increase in donations, as well as sponsorship funds crucial for the university's operations. The university earns a considerable amount of money from the research I'm involved in, making donations and sponsorships vital. The incident with my brother-in-law, Jeff, at the university was a serious matter. If I had reacted angrily to his rude remarks and decided to withdraw from the research or cease donations, it would have had a significant impact on the university's operations. That day, discussing investment theory became secondary as the president and other professors were solely focused on apologizing to me. As I was leaving, I took the opportunity to inform the president that the associate professor he mentioned earlier, who happened to be my brother-in-law Jeff, had insulted me. It seemed that nobody had realized this connection before, and it surprised them. I also expressed my honest feelings about Jeff's behavior, acknowledging that his attitude was questionable, especially for an educator. Despite feeling angry, I spoke passionately in front of about 10 people, including the president, something I wouldn't normally do due to nerves. Looking back, I feel embarrassed yet impressed with myself for reacting in an unexpected manner when pushed too far. After I left, it became apparent that Jeff's attitude had become an issue within the university. He was criticized for his arrogant behavior towards his superiors, even after marrying the president's daughter, and his reputation among students was tarnished. Some saw his appointment as an associate professor as a special case due to his relationship with the president's daughter, leading to criticism directed at the president as well. The president had been defending Jeff, his son-in-law, out of love for his daughter, but he faced trouble himself if his position was compromised due to the criticism directed at Jeff. However, Jeff, unaware that even the president, his biggest supporter, was receiving criticism for defending him, became increasingly arrogant. When I returned to the university, Jeff, as usual, mocked me. His derogatory remarks made me question the integrity of the university, considering that such behavior was tolerated from an associate professor. I began contemplating ending the joint research with the university. Being ridiculed every time I visited felt like a waste of time. As Jeff continued his insults, seemingly oblivious to my absent-mindedness, the president intervened with a louder voice, reprimanding Jeff for his foolishness. Seeing Jeff, usually so overbearing, silenced by the president's words, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jeff's glare at me was short-lived as the president's stern command followed. After today, you're no longer part of this university. Pack up and leave immediately. Jeff appeared to struggle to grasp the gravity of the situation, his gaze fixed blankly on the president's face. Suddenly, his tone shifted to casual, addressing the president as father-in-law and expressing confusion about the sudden turn of events. In response, the president, his face flushed with anger, yelled once more, denying Jeff's right to call him father-in-law and demanding that Jeff divorce his daughter. The mention of divorce caught me off guard. Just then, a young woman and a man in a suit appeared before us. Recognizing the woman, I felt a sense of familiarity. As she spoke, Jeff's shock was evident. It became clear that the woman was Jeff's wife, but her presence at the university was a mystery. With a stern expression, Jeff's wife began to explain her suspicions and how a lawyer had obtained incriminating photos. The man accompanying her then showed Jeff the photos, revealing him arm in arm with another woman I didn't recognize. Jeff's surprise mirrored my own astonishment. Understanding why the president mentioned divorce, I felt it was inappropriate to discuss such matters in the middle of the university, especially in front of me. Despite this, Jeff's wife insisted on the divorce, accusing Jeff of using her and never truly loving her. The unfolding drama left my heart racing with anticipation. Seeing Jeff on the verge of tears brought me a sense of satisfaction, especially when his wife mentioned property division, prompting Jeff to beg for forgiveness, promising not to cheat again. Witnessing Jeff's panic was oddly enjoyable, and I even considered taking a picture to show my husband. Perhaps the president had called me to witness Jeff's suffering. Despite Jeff's pleas, his wife remained firm, stating she had already hired a lawyer. I hadn't anticipated things moving so swiftly. As I watched Jeff, bewildered and frustrated, he redirected his anger towards me, insulting me for being just a part-timer and telling me to leave. At this point, the president stepped in to defend me, highlighting my contributions as a skilled investor, my joint research with the economics department, and my generous donations to the university. Finally, Jeff seemed to absorb the president's words as he silently looked at me. Seizing the opportunity, I confronted Jeff, demanding an apology from him too. Reluctantly, Jeff apologized to me, perhaps under the pressure of the president's intervention. It seemed that the president had orchestrated the entire event to weaken Jeff, showing evidence of his affair, discussing my achievements to further diminish him, and ultimately compelling an apology. Thanks to the president's plan, I felt a sense of relief seeing Jeff apologize to me. As the lawyer explained the details of the property division, I sent my farewells to Bob, ready to leave. He requested my continued support for the university, but I asked for a rain check. My trust in the university had waned due to Jeff, and I had personal matters to attend to. I promised to get back to him and left for the day. When I arrived home, I recounted the incident with Jeff to my husband Tom. He was already aware of my dislike for Jeff, so hearing about his apology and despair brought genuine joy to Tom's face. However, he expressed frustration at not being able to witness Jeff's state firsthand and jokingly scolded me for not taking a picture. Amidst our laughter, I shared another piece of good news with Tom. I was pregnant. Tom's ecstatic reaction made it clear how much it meant to him. I had been feeling unwell lately and had suspected the reason on my way home from the university. The news filled our home with joy and anticipation for the future. I went to the doctor's office and learned about the pregnancy. Although I felt a bit guilty for Bob, who had gone to great lengths to make Jeff apologize, I decided to pause my cooperation with the university for now. Bob seemed disappointed, but he said he would wait until I finished raising the child. When I mentioned reconsidering later, Bob told me that Jeff, who had divorced officially, was now unemployed and struggling to find a new job. Jeff had been trying to get hired by other universities, but his reputation for arrogance was holding him back, and he wasn't receiving any offers. It seemed that Jeff's arrogance had backfired on him, leading to a bigger downfall than expected. Suddenly, I realized that the photos we had used as cat dishes had disappeared. Whether it was because they were cheap gifts or because of the divorce, the couple's photos were gone too.